Well, welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you and your family cruise a little smarter when the ships are sailing. And we are turning our attention to another trip report. This one's going to be a little bit different since the ships aren't sailing. We got kind of a little bit of a series going on with alternate vacations. And I was pretty excited. Good friend of the show, Brian from Utah, reached out and wanted to talk about what they did this summer. So I'd like to welcome back to the show, Brian. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well, Steve.
Well, thanks for stepping up and offering to talk to everybody about some of the things that you did. And I thought it'd be fun just to kind of roll through this as a normal DCL trip report, but it was a little bit different. Before we jump into it, you guys went camping. So I think it'd be fun to, what is your camping background, Brian?
That was what I thought was kind of interesting. We are not campers. We had been camping as a family one time 5 years before this. Well, tent camping, I should say. We've stayed in my parents' trailer, but it's not really camping a couple times. But not really campers, but with other vacation options not available, we found ourselves up in one of the national forests, trying that out and finding out what we liked about that and what we really miss about Disney vacations.
So it's kind of interesting. Have you ever, since you were not campers, and I guess we were talking about this ahead of time, I know you guys are big Disneyland fans and generally go down there. You've never camped at Fort Wilderness by any chance down at Walt Disney World. Have you ever looked into that?
Not really. I did look at the cabins just recently as our latest cruise was canceled, and that's one of the places I kind of looked at going to visit at Disney World, but haven't looked at the actual campsites themselves, just the cabins.
Our family went. I'm going to date myself here. We went down when Epcot opened, not the first year, but the second year, or sometime between the first and second year. And we actually drove our camper down from Nebraska. We had a pop-up camper. We stayed at a KOA, and I'm like, to this day, I'm wondering, I have to ask my parents, why didn't we stay at Fort Wilderness? Because I hear that's just such an amazing campground.
Yeah, I didn't realize, don't think until fairly recently you could literally camp there. I've been to the lodge a couple times, and that is a really cool place. But yeah, it would be interesting.
So you, like a lot of other people, our vacations have kind of been put on hold. Well, the vacations that we were planning on taking have kind of been put on hold. You turn to kind of the great outdoors. Our family went to Yellowstone. You guys live in a beautiful part of the country up in Utah. So many amazing places to camp. Kind of talk about the planning for this, and maybe not necessarily what you needed to buy and that, but how did you decide where to go, and just how did you get a campsite?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. So I grew up by the mouth of it's Little Cottonwood Canyon. So that's the canyon in Utah that has Snowbird and Alta, are the two ski resorts up that canyon. That's what people would probably know it for. I remember many times going up there as a teenager, and there's this campsite up there. I'd drive by and be like, oh, it'd be interesting to camp. It's not too far from home, but never did it until 5 years ago. My wife and I decided, hey, we should go check that out, and went on to the recreation.gov. For those who aren't familiar, is a website where you can go reserve campsites at campsites all over the country. This Tanner Flats campsites is one of those. And so 5 years ago, we tried it once and had a good time and said, oh, we should do this more often because it's only 25, 30 minutes from my house, and just never got around to it again until now. We didn't have any other options. And so we're like, oh, let's go back and see if that campsite's on there and see if there's any availability. Things are under pretty high demand right now, so we had to go in the middle of the week, but we found a campsite available in the middle of the week and decided to go up there for a couple nights and camp. And it was a cool experience. It's amazing how many things we have right in our own backyards. A lot of us like to go travel far distances, and now we're being forced to discover what's close to home.
You said that so well right there. As far as I think a lot of us are that way. You're thinking about we're going to do this cruise to the Caribbean or to all these different, destinations. And you kind of forget what's in your backyard and just how amazing it really is. And the other thing too, just about camping, and I guess I've known this flying with different people, is it's a little bit like it's us Disney planners. It's kind of the same thing. Boy, if you don't get on it right away, you're not going to get those primo spots. And sometimes things fill up pretty quickly. So you guys are lucky probably to get something even in the middle of the week.
Yeah, for sure. And we said, oh, well, we'll go up in the middle of the week. And then we looked, and a couple of weeks later, there was availability on the weekend. And we said, oh, if we like it, we'll go up again. And we quickly discovered those spots filled up. And so we ended up having to go in the middle of the week again because we did enjoy it. Tying this into cruising, we often talk about how a 3-night cruise is too short, maybe for your first experience. But for camping, for us, one night's too short because there's a lot of effort to go camping. But more than 2 nights is too long. So we ended up going 2-night trips. That way we could, go up, have fun, and then go home, have a break, shower, and go back up again. We find too long camping is just a little bit rough.
So remind everybody who all went on this trip with you. How big is your family again?
So I've got 4 kids, ages 12 to 5. So it's 4 kids and me and my wife. It was kind of nice. We're close to where my parents live. Like I mentioned, they came up to have dinner with us a couple times. We've been trying to do this thing like many people when you have older parents and you're trying to be careful right now, but still find ways to find each other. Being in the outdoors was something they were comfortable with. So they came up and hung out with us in the evenings a couple times.
Perfect. So you guys, it's pretty close to your house. You drive up there. What was the campground arrival like? Was it very busy when you got up there? Was it easy to get into your camping spot? What was that like?
Yeah, that was kind of the interesting thing. They have hosts at these campgrounds. We pulled up, they have a little shack, little guard shack thing as you pull up. When the first time there was one of the hosts was there, and I asked them, and of course you do this all online now and you pay for it online. And it was kind of clear they were trying to social distance from everyone. I asked a quick question, but then they sent us on our way to our campsite. Didn't have to show our proof of registration or prove who we were or anything. They were, I saw them around taking care of things, but they were keeping their distance from everybody. So we just went and found our campsite and got started.
Well, I know when you guys were in the cruise, when we talked last time, that you guys had 2 cabins, right?
We did. And things about campsite selection that we learned, first off, is we have a fairly large tent that we got years ago. It's an 8-person tent, but if you know anything about tents, when it says 8, it means we can fit 6 people in it realistically. And so one of the things we found is you have to find a site that has a tent pad that's big enough for your tent, because ours is a little on the large side. The other thing we learned about campsite selection is parking availability. Some of them have room for more vehicles than others. And while we only had 1 campsite, we couldn't fit our kids and all the gear that we had in our minivan effectively. And so we ended up having to drive both our cars up just to fit everything with the food and the coolers and all our gear. So 1 campsite, but 2 cars had to come. So that was kind of our constraints. The first time our first campsite we got, the first time we went up was great. And then we decided we wanted to kind of scout out the campground and figure out and go somewhere different the next time. One of the things about campsites is you can find, do you want to be by the river? Do you want to be where there's more trails to hike to? Where do you want to be in the center of the campground on the edge? There's lots of kind of different options, much like you can pick a cabin on a ship. And
so kind of like concierge, the inside cabin, or maybe that beautiful veranda view, huh?
That's absolutely right. Absolutely right. And then you can also make a mistake like we did. We were out hiking and walking around just exploring the campsite and found a site that had this beautiful view and had, creek access, your veranda right there. And we thought it was really cool. And so that's the one we booked right there we had Cell Single where my wife booked it right then. And for some reason, we just didn't pay attention to this. And then we go back up 2 weeks later for our second trip and we realize, oh, this is kind of a ways from the parking lot. We're going to have to haul our gear all the way up this trail. What were we thinking? We thought there was a building up there that was the restrooms and discovered no. The restrooms were basically the equivalent of having a cabin on deck 2 on the Magic and having to walk all the way to deck 10 up the stairs because it was a big So every time we went down there, I was like, man, I feel like I'm climbing 10 decks on a cruise ship. And of course, every time I do that, I'd get almost there and one of my kids would come down and say, oh, will you take me down? So I'd have to walk back down and up again. So that was a little lesson for us to pay more attention to where are the restrooms and how far off from the parking lot is your campsite, or you're going to be doing some extra hauling of gear and walking around.
I guess that's a double-edged sword if you want to be too close to a restroom or not, I suppose, huh?
Yeah. And that was one interesting, we're in this era of social distancing. That was one nice thing. The first time we were there, I don't think I maybe ran into one other person near the restroom ever. That was a smaller restroom and we were closer to it. The second time, it was like all the campsites had to walk further and there definitely was a little bit more foot traffic, though it was still very easy to be socially distanced, which was nice.
What do they do for the restrooms then? Obviously they were open. So did they do anything different as far as like with the age of COVID here?
So the smaller one, single use at a time, and they had a big sign on it that they wanted you to prop the door open afterwards so that they could keep the airflow to help mitigate standing water and help mitigate COVID risks, apparently. So that was the only thing I really noticed differently. The other thing I would say, like the restrooms were pretty nice at this campsite. They had running water, but there wasn't actually soap, but we're all in this era of washing our hands. So we made sure we brought soap so we would have some available because they didn't provide that.
Well, before we turn into some of the shipboard the campground activities, let's talk about dining. How is that as far as bringing all the food up there, planning the different meals? Did you guys plan out the meals ahead of time as far as what you're going to eat and when, or did you just kind of pack a bunch of stuff and say, well, wing it?
No, we are planners and we like our rotational dining and we wanted to have good food. You know, we're not going on a cruise, but that doesn't mean we can't eat well. Yeah, we did plan it out in advance. We do cook on charcoal quite a bit at home, and we've done some Dutch oven cooking in the past at home. And so that was kind of our go-to for this. But we tried to do things that we could prep a lot of at home and then just have to heat up and cook up there. And so like we did pulled pork nachos one night. My wife made the pulled pork in advance and froze it. And then we brought it up there and we just had to layer it with beans and cheese and chips and stuff in the Dutch oven, which made for a really good meal. It was easy the first night we went up there. And we did Dutch oven mac and cheese, and we roasted hot dogs over the fire, and we did, lots of good stuff. Had a camp stove, did pancakes in the morning. So it was worth planning the food out. You know, that takes a little bit of effort, and then you got to think about keeping it in the cooler and all that sort of stuff. But it was good. We cheat and we use Dutch oven liners so that we don't have to clean the Dutch oven and make that a pain. They're just aluminum foil liners you put in, and then you can just pull them out and throw them away. That made that easier. But yeah, it was good. We made it fun for our kids. We don't drink a lot of soda at home, but we went and bought a bunch of soda and brought that up so that they thought it was exciting and different. And we had all the snacks, and it's not couldn't go up to the pool deck and get pizza or a burger, but we made sure there was no shortage of food for the kids. So things that they don't normally have at home. So that made it fun for them.
And you had that free soda machine basically going.
Yeah, basically a free soda machine. Yeah. I do have a good newbie camping story about food though. We weren't in an area that I would consider very high risk for bears or anything like that, but we've always been told, hey, make sure you put your food in the car at night. You don't want to leave it near your tent or out where animals can get into it. And so we were doing that, but our second time up, where we had the long hike up from the parking lot, one night we didn't want to take our big cooler back down to the car because it was just a pain to hike it all the way down the trail. And we thought, oh, it's probably fine. They didn't have big locks on like the trash dumpsters or anything. There's probably not a problem. And 4 a.m., I hear the cooler lid opening and closing. And I kind of get out of sleep. I'm like, someone's on our campsite. And then I go, wait, why would a human be getting into our cooler? And I don't have my glasses on and I can't find my glasses. I peer out the campsite with my flashlight and there's some black dog looking thing getting into our cooler. And I have to make noise and try and chase it off. I think it was a raccoon or something had gotten in and had pulled a bunch of the food out of the cooler. They hadn't gotten past the plastic bags, but yeah, it was kind of a reminder of why you're supposed to put your coolers up every night, because otherwise at 4 a.m. you get a rude wake up call and have to go haul it down anyways.
Oh man, I think we made that mistake a long time ago when I first, a friend of mine and I went camping, and the raccoons got into it overnight too. So luckily, no. Are there bears in that area? Are there?
They had a sign to be bear aware, but I have never heard of bears in that canyon. Not too far from there, I've heard of it, but it's over on the other side of the mountain. I would be really surprised if they've ever had bears up that where we were.
Okay, well, I think that would be like the perfect way to do it, having that planned out, things prepared ahead of time. So you're not having to do that in that camping environment. And it's just easy to pull it out and start kicking away. So boy, it sounds amazing. So thinking about, your kids are quite a varied age range. You got quite 4 different kids there. What were some of the things that you guys did just around the campsite? What was there to do? What were some of the things that the kids really enjoyed being out in the great outdoors?
Yeah, and this is one of the reasons why we like to go to Disneyland or go on a Disney cruise, right? It's so much easier as a parent. You get much more of a break and don't feel like you have to play entertainment for your kids. The great outdoors helps with that, but there was definitely a lot more time spent as a parent, both in terms of, doing food prep and as well as entertaining the kids and keeping them happy. So a couple of things we did, we brought a bunch of games. So we have like this big mat checker set it's a big checker set you could just put out on the ground and play. So we did stuff like that. We had a lot of fun with, it's an old game, but it's an old electronic, I think it's Catchphrase, where you have to describe things and guess words. So we played that around the campfire. My son and I have been reading Kingdom Keepers, that series. I've been reading that to him at night, and he was in the middle of one of those and brought the book up. And I spent like 3 hours one afternoon. We just powered through and finished the book that he was on together. So lots of little fun things just in the campsite, playing games and stuff like that, brought things for them to color with. But we also went out and hiked. Had one morning with 2 of my kids. We went out and just, that's the fun thing about doing this. We're up in this national forest, and you could really feel like you're away from everything. There's a river that runs through there, and we're able to go kind of scramble across a boulder field and go down in and, get to a part of the river that wasn't necessarily off a trail or easily accessible without going over this boulder field. And it was really fun to just get out and about and let the kids do that. My wife bought a hammock online before we went there, and we hooked up the hammock, and the kids had a lot of fun playing in the hammock. That was a fun thing that I hadn't even thought of that she did. So lots of things like that. Yeah, we mentioned dining a little bit. I should mention, we had some character dining experiences. We had a Bambi breakfast. There was a family of deer that liked to come through the campsite, and one morning they hung out with us during breakfast quite a bit, and we were able to take pictures, and they were like right there. We had a character dining with Chippendale one evening. There's a pair of chipmunks that was running through the campsite trying to get any food we dropped. So we had some of those character dining experiences.
Did they social distance, or were you able to get up close to get those pictures with them?
Yeah, they obviously you don't want to get too close to a wild animal, but we were able to get pretty good pictures. They were not too scared. They were willing to, they were probably within 15, 20 feet of us. So the chipmunks even closer, but the deer, we were able to get good pictures.
We went over to Central Oregon and just kind of rented a house, but it's in this area where the houses are all out in the woods. And so we actually had a family of raccoons went by one evening, and I don't know how many deer we saw, but there was a couple of chipmunks back there. And that's the first time my kids have ever actually fed chipmunks, where they'll come up and just grab like some sunflower seeds and stuff out of your hand. And so, yeah, I definitely don't want to make fun of or make light of. You're right. You definitely don't want to get too close to wildlife, because wildlife is wildlife. But anyways, yeah, great character dining for you guys. That's amazing.
For sure.
So, kind of moving on to that, you've things around the campground. Were there things outside of the campground that you guys wanted to go and do? I know like a lot of places that around here, people go out and camp, and there's some rafting, whitewater rafting areas, mountain biking, those type of things. Was there anything that you guys had planned, or is it more just kind of staying local to the campground itself?
We just chose to stay local to the campground and enjoy that. We were not that far from civilization. Like I said, it's just right up this canyon. And so the first time we went up, we forgot lots of things, and I had to make 2 or 3 Walmart runs as we realized what we forgot. The second time we went up, I was smarter, and I got to avoid having to do that. One thing we discovered, we went through firewood a whole lot faster than we anticipated. So the first time I had to go down and get extra firewood, and I think they may have sold it there at the campground from the campground host, but I didn't check into it. But in terms of activities, one thing that is really cool that we could have done and are aware of is, like I said, this campsite's probably 3 miles down the canyon from Snowbird Ski Resort. And Snowbird does all sorts of fun summer activities. And so they have the tram open normally. I don't know exactly what they were doing with all the COVID stuff going on, but normally they have a tram, they have an alpine roller coaster and alpine slide and a whole bunch of summer activities you could do. And this campsite would have been perfectly accessible for that. Normally the time we were up there, end of August, beginning of September, they have a really awesome Oktoberfest up there that we've gone to in years past. But of course, that was canceled this year. So there's definitely things in the area, but because we've done them in the past, we were there really just to enjoy the campsite, enjoy nature, and feeling like you're away from everything, which was really the big thing. For me, again, part of why we do Disney vacations, I just need a break from reality sometimes, just go someplace magical, just be able to disconnect completely. And I felt like, just getting out there and doing this, it's a lot of work to camp. So I didn't quite have the relaxing of the cruise or the entertainment offerings that you get at a Disney vacation, but we had the disconnecting from life and being able to just feel like you're someplace completely different. We got that experience, which was much needed with all the craziness this year.
Yeah, just finding that time to be able to be together as a family, kind of get away from all the pressures that are around your house and with work and everything that has kind of gone along with this, yeah, above and beyond what's just normal. So yeah, being able to get out there and do that is pretty special. And I'd be kind of remiss, it's tough to get those hammocks out on Castaway Cay. So good on your wife for, making one right there for you guys to enjoy the whole time you were there.
Yeah. I didn't realize how inexpensive and how relatively easy they are to set up. As long as you go somewhere with some trees, it's not too bad.
So what about nighttime activities? Obviously it gets a little darker. Some campsites are kind of cool because they have some like evening ranger activities where they do talks. Sounds like you weren't quite at that type of campground, I'm guessing, but did you guys do s'mores or did you guys have some fun that way?
Yeah. I don't know what they might have here in a normal year. Like that was one of the interesting things, just an aside. If you're having trouble finding campsites, that all the group sites were empty. Like this place had like an amphitheater and a bunch of big like group campsites. And from what I understand, if you were willing to pay the group campsite fee, you could have gone there as a small family. I heard some people that I talked to who did that when they couldn't find anywhere else. If they were willing to spring the extra money, go get a group site because there were no groups available. But in terms of evening activities that we did do s'mores, and we did a couple of variations on those. We did some, if you want to get interesting with s'mores, we got Reese's peanut butter cups instead of the traditional chocolate bar and did that. One of the things my wife has learned to do during the pandemic, she took up baking early on and learned how to make homemade graham crackers, and they are phenomenal. And so I'm now spoiled. Store-bought graham crackers don't taste so good to me anymore. So we had homemade graham crackers. And then the second time we went up, we didn't have the homemade graham crackers, but we did s'mores with cookies. We had some different types of cookies that we bought that we used for the outer part of the s'mores. So we get creative with our s'mores, try different things. That was definitely good. We actually had my dad's birthday party up there because we were able to go up. It was our campsite, but my sister and her family came up, and then my parents came up, and we celebrated my dad's birthday and had cobbler and did that. It was nice because we could get people together all outdoors in an environment that felt safer for everybody. And that worked out really well because we weren't competing to find a spot at a park or something because it was our campsite. So it's one of the nice things about camping close to home.
So what haven't we touched on, Brian, that you guys were able to do over these two different times?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We've talked about Ted. So I guess I didn't talk about, for people who maybe are trying to figure it out, you start thinking about if I want to buy a tent because maybe I don't have any of this gear or whatever. That was one thing we found is we didn't have a lot of storage space in our tent by the time even an 8-person tent, by the time we had 6 people in it, partially because we got the nice air mattresses to be comfortable and whatnot. So if Christy was on, I would make a joke. We didn't have the storage space like she complains about, which is a DVC resort that doesn't have a good storage.
That was in the Polynesia. That's in the tropics, but you're in a temperate forest. So I think the storage might have been a little bit better, huh?
Yeah, outside the tent, there was no storage in the tent, but plenty of storage space around, right? Let's see. We talked about food. I think we may have covered most everything. For somebody who's maybe not a camper, maybe there's a lot of trepidation, kind of wondered how it was going to go because, again, we hadn't been many times, especially never with all 4 of our kids, but it was a lot of fun. I won't deny it was a lot of work to gather everything up. You feel like you're spending a lot of time. Meal prep can feel like it's a lot of work, but spending some time planning the meals and doing some prep work ahead of time made that much more manageable. I'm glad we tried it. I'm glad we went up and did it. I certainly missed our Disney vacations and can see why I love cruising so much because it is so wonderful to have all that stuff taken care of for you. But it certainly is worth giving it a shot, especially right now when other options aren't available.
I'm kind of thinking about that last night on the cruise after your day at Castaway Cay and you got to come back but there's still somebody cooking for you, isn't there? We're all complaining because, we got to pack up our stuff and get it out there before, in time for them to take it and everything like that. But really, it's pretty easy. You just got to get the stuff back in your bag and you still got somebody cooking for you and somebody entertaining you. And you're still, on that beautiful ship. So I'm guessing that getting out of the campsite was a little bit harder getting off the ship.
It certainly is. A couple of things we did. We actually got plastic totes to put a lot of our supplies in. That was really helpful to keep, and that's something we've done in the past. We had them from the first time we went camping, and I'm really glad we did invest in those. Just plastic totes to put everything in, but it still was a lot of effort, especially the second time we were up. We had that long hike down to the car. And so it just takes a lot of time to gather up all the gear, get the tent down. I've always found that, setting up tents is a little tricky, not too bad, but getting them to fit back in the bag they came in is near impossible. So that is a lot of effort that you don't have to do after Castaway.
Kind of looking back on it, Brian, it sounds like this is something you guys will do again. I guess before I ask you the final question, what other tips do you have? I guess, what other tips do you have for somebody that might be camping the first time, or some of the things that you guys learned that we haven't talked about?
I've heard it mentioned on other podcasts, kind of that Disney magic of being able to go look and watch for something that opens up. So definitely, if you're trying to find a reserved campsite, play with the dates, play around, use all those Disney tricks, and you can find stuff. Recreation.gov is a great site to go find a place to camp. And I love that they do give you a little bit of information about the campsites, so you can kind of try and make some good decisions there. Like we said, we learned having to hike off the parking lot a little bit made things a little bit hard, and having a longer walk to the bathroom. But it also meant we were off on our own. So you kind of just have to prioritize what's important to you and just plan accordingly there. Trick, if you want to this is a trick somebody taught me years ago. If you're having to start charcoal for a Dutch oven or even a fire in the fire pit, dryer lint is incredibly flammable, and it's an easy thing to take. So we collect all the dryer lint out of our dryer and have it in a bag so that we can use it when we do start our charcoal in a charcoal chimney for Dutch oven cooking. And we also used it to start the fire in the fire pit. So that's a little random trick someone taught me years ago that I'll share. Boy, I think those are the big things that come to my mind.
So, kind of going forward, do you guys see yourself continuing as tent campers, or do you see yourself kind of upgrading to that cabin with a veranda view and getting an RV, or maybe even one of those giant buses?
I don't know. I think, to me, camping in a tent, there's something like that's real camping. And I don't know if I want to cross. I mean, I guess I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get back to cruising here before too long. And I'd rather spend my money doing those sort of traveling things than buying an RV or a camper. But we will see. I suppose if travel doesn't return the way I hope it does, then maybe we'll have to figure something else out.
Well, thanks for playing along with me tonight, Brian. And it kind of doing this is kind of like one of our regular Disney trip reports. I'm glad you guys had an opportunity to get out there and do that and, spend some time. All of us are just kind of trying to reinvent the wheel and pivot and try and figure out what that next vacation is going to look like until we kind of go back to cruising or whatever else it is that we've got in the long term. But what's your guys' plans cruise wise? We could talk a little Disney Cruise Line here as we finish up.
Yeah.
What's your guys' plans?
Yeah. So we had a cruise planned for December on the Magic out of Miami. Very merry time, and it was the last cruise on the list that was canceled in this last round of cancellations just a couple days. So yeah, it was really disappointing. We were hoping to make it, and they canceled through. I think they said December 6th, but then December 12th, and our cruise left on December 12th. So I was hoping we wouldn't make the cutoff, but they did cancel it. So, but we're going to go turn that into a Disney World land vacation and go down and enjoy Disney World and Universal instead. But we booked on opening day a 7-night Mexican Riviera cruise out of San Diego in October of 2021. So we are super excited for that. Be first time on the Wonder. It'll be our first time cruising out of San Diego, and it'll be our first 7-night cruise. So super excited about that.
Yeah, Tiana's place on the Wonder. San Diego, just an amazing city. Super easy to cruise out of there. You don't have the. I think it's really going to be interesting to see when they open up their new cruise terminal in Port Canaveral, how they retheme it. So you don't necessarily get that aspect of it, but boy, I love San Diego as a city. I think you guys are gonna have a wonderful time down in Mexico.
Yeah, we're super excited, and it's a little closer to home for us, so we don't have to fly across the country. Yeah, and it's in October, which we'll see. My experience, Southern California, often the water is a little warmer in October than in the middle of the summer, so it should be good.
And once you get down to Mexico, it'll definitely be warmer down there too. So have you guys been to Disneyland during Christmas, during the holidays?
We have. We've done Disneyland during Halloween and during Christmas, but it's been a long time since we've done Christmas time at Disneyland. So we're excited to do Christmas at Disney World this year, though I know it's going to be a little different.
I think we did Disneyland at Christmas the third time. We brought our kids down there, and we did it we just fell in love with it. We did it 2 or 3 years in a row, and I think it's just one of my favorite times when they have the parks decorated for the holiday seasons. I love Cars Land at Christmas. That's kind of one of my favorite places. Mater's got this junkyard Christmas tree made out of old tires, which is kind of neat. So I think you guys can have a wonderful time down at Walt Disney World with the parks all decorated and enjoy it. Hollywood Studios is amazing. I love the decorations there. I'll love to hear your thoughts when you guys get back from that.
Yeah, we're super excited. I figure that's one thing that there's no reason for Disney to skimp on the decorations, right? They probably already bought them all, have them in storage. So I'm hoping they're out for a full force this year, even if some of the entertainment and other things have to change a little bit.
Well, awesome. Well, when you guys get back from Walt Disney World, if you want to talk about it and your experiences down there, we could definitely do that. And I hope that we're all out there sailing here pretty soon on those ships, because I know not just like your family, a lot of the other families and all of our listeners just can't wait to get back out there again.
I was staying very positive because I think there's a lot of signs things are getting close, especially some of the other cruise lines are making positive things. I'm really hoping we're getting close here. But, one of the things Disney's always going to make sure we're safe, and Disney's also, I think, wants to make sure they can give it a good experience. So hopefully our patience will pay off and it'll come back and be able to stay back and be good.
I'm sure it will. All right. Well, all the best, Brian. Thank you so much for doing this tonight. All the best to your family, and we will talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Well, that's going to wrap up our show. Just a quick show. I really want to thank Brian for coming on and sharing his family's experiences as they went camping this summer as an alternative to their regular Disney vacation. And we've got another fun bonus episode coming out in the next week or so. It's going to be all about the Florida Keys. Good friend of the show, Carol, joins us and teaches me and Christy a lot about the Florida Keys, which I did not know. And it's a place that we've always wanted to go to. I didn't realize how long and how many different destinations there are to go down there. And I hope that all of you will tune in and listen to that show as well, as we all search for different ways to spend that quality vacation time with family and friends as the ships have paused. So if you would like to come on and share your experiences, you can always reach out to me, Steve at DCLpodcast.com. Reach out and we will find a time to set you up and we'll talk a little Disney Cruise Line Adventures by Disney Run Disney, or if you've got a good alternative vacation story this past summer, or maybe moving into the fall as well, we'll bring you on and talk about it until the ship starts sailing. Well, once again, thanks for coming back and taking a listen. On behalf of myself, Steve, Christy, and Chris, all of us here at the DCL Podcast, we wish you and your family just be well, take care of each other out there, and we'll see you next time on the DCL Podcast.